In quiet places where everyone knows each other, fear has a way of spreading like a slow infection. Rumors travel faster than facts, suspicion settles into the spaces between neighbors, and the line between truth and myth begins to blur. When violence erupts in a community like this, people rarely confront the chaos directly. Instead, they search for something simple to blame, something monstrous, something inhuman. Yet, the most unsettling question is never whether a creature exists in the darkness beyond the town's limits, but whether the real danger has been living among the townsfolk all along, quietly waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Hello friends, and welcome back to ETF. Stories about monsters in small towns almost always promise the same thing: a confrontation between myth and reality. A community becomes convinced that something ancient and terrible is lurking just beyond the tree line, and the narrative slowly peels back the layers of that belief. Sometimes the monster turns out to be real, sometimes the real monster is human nature itself, and occasionally a story becomes something stranger than ever. A chaotic collision of genre ideas, tonal shifts, and narrative decisions that push a film into something unintentionally surreal. The Beast of Trinity, Texas is one of those films. What begins as a gritty rural thriller about a series of gruesome killings and a mysterious creature quickly evolves into something far more unpredictable. It's a movie that seems to constantly change its mind about what kind of story it wants to tell. Creature features, small-town crime drama, conspiracy thriller, and psychological mystery all compete for narrative control. The result is a film that is somewhat fascinating to analyze, not because it succeeds cleanly, good God it does not, but because its ambition and its chaos are often inseparable. The film's strongest conceptual idea lies in its setting. Trinity, Texas is portrayed as the kind of small town where every resident carries a history with every other resident. In places like this, social stability depends on fragile networks of trust. When a string of brutal murders begins to terrorize the community, that stability shatters almost immediately. Psychologically, this reaction should feel believable. Close communities under stress tend to spiral quickly into suspicion. Fear demands explanation, and when none are readily available, people just construct them. The legend of a monstrous creature roaming the countryside becomes the perfect narrative container for the town's anxiety. This idea should, in theory, work, because it taps into a long tradition of American folklore. Bigfoot sightings, swamp monsters, mysterious predators lurking in rural landscapes. The woods surrounding Trinity become symbolic spaces, the unknown beyond the edges of civilization. The film initially suggests that the town may be confronting something primal, but it never quite commits to that idea. One of the film's most glaring flaws is its tonal identity crisis. The narrative seems to introduce compelling ideas, only to abandon them moments later. Early scenes frame the mystery like a gritty investigative thriller. A sheriff and his deputies attempt to analyze crime scenes, interview locals, and piece together clues. For a while, the film feels interested in exploring how trauma and paranoia spread through a community. Then, the story veers toward cryptid horror. Characters talk about a beast in the woods. Evidence hints at something non-human. The audience is encouraged to imagine a creature stalking the countryside. But before that thread can fully develop, the film pivots again into conspiracy territory. Suddenly there are secrets involving powerful figures, hidden motives, and a network of deception that begins to stretch plausibility to its absolute limits. The narrative layering becomes less intriguing and more disorienting. Instead of deepening the mystery, each new twist muddies the story's thematic focus. It feels as if the script is chasing every possible explanation simultaneously, hoping that just one of them lands. Because the plot is constantly escalating and redirecting itself, the characters rarely have the space to develop meaningful psychological depth. The sheriff, arguably the narrative anchor, has the potential to be a fascinating figure. As a war veteran tasked with protecting a town descending into panic, he represents the archetype of the wounded protector. Trauma, reasonability, and moral exhaustion could have formed the emotional backbone of this film. Instead, he often feels like a passenger in his own story. Clues appear almost randomly, suspects emerge and disappear, revelations arrive without the slow psychological buildup that would make them resonate. The characters react to the plot rather than helping shape it, which weakens the emotional investment of the audience. In psychological storytelling, the most powerful mysteries are driven by characters' decisions. Here, the mysteries often feel driven by convenience. About halfway through the film, the narrative begins accelerating towards increasingly bizarre territory. The investigation uncovers layers of deception involving prominent members of the town. What initially appeared to be an external threat gradually morphs into a web of human corruption and manipulation. By this point, the film has moved so far from its original premise that the creature itself almost feels like a forgotten subplot. This tonal whiplash produces one of the film's strangest viewing experiences. The audience begins the story expecting a monster movie. Instead, the narrative becomes something closer to a paranoid thriller about secrets buried within the town's power structure. I guess this shift could have worked if it were more carefully developed, but the film rushes through the transformation so quickly that it feels less like a revelation and more like narrative freefall. In a world where algorithms decide what's remembered, there's still a corner of the internet fighting to feel cinema. Here at Embrace the Film, movies aren't just reviewed, they're dissected, felt, and understood. Where cult oddities, forgotten VHS nightmares, art house meditations, and studio giants are all given the same thing: time, psychological depth, and respect. If you believe film is more than background noise, if you believe movies shape who we are, if you believe physical media still matters, you can help keep this space alive. Over on Ko-Fi, you can support the channel in whatever way makes sense for you. Drop a single tip, the cost of a cup of coffee, or less. No pressure, no tears required. Just a simple way to say, keep going. Become a reoccurring supporter and help fuel deeper dives, better production, and more ambitious projects. Predictable support means more consistent content and bigger ideas brought to life. And because support should feel meaningful, there are rewards. Gain early access to upcoming content, exclusive members-only videos, deeper psychological essays, and more. Curated physical media pulled straight from the ETF archive in monthly mystery boxes, delivered to you. Want your film covered on the channel and moved up the list? Supporters can fast-track reviews of specific titles, and more evolving perks as the channel grows. Every tip helps fund physical media acquisitions, research and writing time, production upgrades, and the continued excavation and preservation of forgotten cinema. This channel exists because of passion, but it grows because of community. If Embrace the Film has ever helped you see a movie differently, if it has introduced you to something strange, beautiful, or unforgettable, if it's reminded you why you fell in love with movies in the first place, consider supporting on Ko-Fi using the link in the description. Help keep physical media alive. Help keep psychological film analysis thriving. Help keep cinema personal. And as always, keep embracing film. Then comes the ending. Without spoiling every detail, the final reveal attempts to tie together the Beast legend, the murders, and the conspiracies that have been hinted at throughout the film. Unfortunately, instead of clarifying the mystery, the twist sends the story into what can only be described as full-blown narrative chaos. The explanation for the killings feels both overly complicated and strangely underdeveloped at the same time. Threads that seemed central to the story are resolved abruptly, while other questions remain unanswered entirely. Psychologically, the ending attempts to deliver a statement about human corruption and the dangers of collective paranoia. The message seems to be that myths are often weaponized to hide darker truths. But the execution is so over the top that the thematic point gets buried under the sheer absurdity of the reveal. Rather than producing the chilling realization that the film seems to aim for, the twist just leaves viewers simply baffled. At least, it left me this way. And yet, despite all of these flaws and some very poor performances, there is something oddly compelling about this one. Part of this comes from the film's regional filmmaking spirit. It has the energy of a project driven by ambition rather than resources. The filmmakers clearly wanted to tell a sprawling story filled with twists, mythological hints, and social commentary. Sometimes that ambition just works against the film, but sometimes it creates moments of genuine intrigue. There's a strange fascination in watching a movie that keeps swinging for bigger ideas, even if many of these swings are actually misses. The film's unpredictability becomes its own kind of entertainment. You never quite know where the story's gonna go next, and the chaotic energy keeps the experience from being entirely dull. Ultimately, The Beast of Trinity Texas feels like a film built around a powerful premise that it never fully harnesses. The idea of a town unraveling under the belief that a monster stalks the countryside is rich with psychological potential. It could have explored paranoia, folklore, and the human need to invent villains when reality becomes too complex to understand. Instead, the narrative piles twist upon twist until the central metaphor collapses under its own weight. The real Beast of Trinity, it turns out, isn't the creature in the woods. It's the film's inability to decide what kind of story it wants to tell. And while that may ultimately weaken the movie, it also ensures that the experience does remain memorable. Because sometimes the strangest monsters in cinema aren't the ones on screen at all. They're the ones hiding inside the script. Well, friends, that's gonna be all for now. If you are interested in this film, I urge you to check it out for yourself and formulate your own thoughts and opinions about it. I hope you come share those thoughts and opinions in the comments. Let me know if there are any movies that you would like to see discussed on this channel. I always love to hear from you guys, and I do my best to try and respond to everyone. As always, I've put a link down in the description to a physical copy of this film, if one exists, that you can add to your collection. Using that link helps out the channel, and that's always appreciated. If you like this video, I urge you to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you aren't already. I know that some of you watching aren't subscribed, so help out the channel and subscribe. If you'd like to go the extra mile and support the channel even more, we do have a couple options for you to do so. You can join us on Patreon, where you can get yourself early access to future videos, Patreon exclusive content, and access to the ETF Digital Archive. We get a lot of compliments about the VHS collection that you guys see in the background of our videos. Well, we've been hard at work slowly digitizing the collection and creating a place where we can share it with all of you. Thanks to the help of the Plex platform, we can now do just that. This is our way of doing our part in helping preserve that gritty, nostalgic VHS look and feeling before it's gone forever. With Plex, you can stream our VHS collection from anywhere at any time. It's basically like having a streaming service for VHS, which I think is pretty cool. Additionally, if you're tired of adding to your growing list of monthly subscriptions, you can help support the channel on Ko-Fi, where you can drop a single tip, the cost of a cup of coffee, or less. No pressure, no tiers required. But with all of the same monthly benefits that you will find on Patreon offered as well. We also have a Mercari store where you can go and get yourself a little piece of the ETF archive. While collecting VHS, Blu-rays, and DVDs over many years, we wind up with lots of duplicates, and we unfortunately can't store them all. So on our Mercari shop, we have all of those for sale. Purchasing those not only expands your collection, but makes room for us to expand ours. All the links for everything are down in the description. Until next time, stay safe. And as always, thanks for watching.